Dawn Richard, testified Friday that she saw Combs attack his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in 2009.
I think that the testimony that Dawn Richard gave and the defense really going in on some of the inconsistencies were the...
Imagine stepping into a cavernous Manhattan federal courthouse. The chatter of reporters, the shuffle of papers, the tense hush as cameras click into place. You find your seat, and the buzz of anticipation is electric. This is the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, a towering hip-hop mogul whose empire spans music, fashion, and media. The charges? Sex trafficking, racketeering, obstruction of justice. If convicted, he could face a lifetime behind bars. Now picture Dawn Richard, pop star, reality TV alum, former Danity Kane member, rising from the witness box. She's poised, cool under pressure, but you can see a flash of steel in her eyes. In that moment, thousands of viewers around the world are about to witness something extraordinary. A first-hand account of domestic violence so brutal that it could reshape the entire prosecution's case. This isn't courtroom drama for drama's sake. This is real life, power wielded as a weapon, victims silenced by fear, and a star-studded world where even billionaires can be held accountable. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack Dawn's testimony. We'll rewind to 2009, when she says she watched Diddy savage his then-girlfriend Cassie with astonishing cruelty. We'll relive the clashes between the defense's objections and the judge's warning glares. And we'll explore why every allegation of violence matters in a federal sex trafficking trial. Stick around. Because once you hear what Dawn saw, you'll never look at the Diddy case the same way again. Sean Diddy Combs didn't just build an empire. He constructed a global brand. From Bad Boy Records to Ciroc Vodka, his Midas touch turned every venture into gold. But behind the bling, prosecutors allege, lay a far darker operation. In March 2024, a sealed indictment landed, accusing Combs of leading a criminal enterprise that trafficked women and girls for sexual exploitation. 5 felony counts sit on the table: sex trafficking conspiracy, forced labor, racketeering, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. The government's narrative paints a chilling picture. According to court filings, Diddy and his inner circle used shell companies and private jets to lure victims with promises of stardom. Bodyguards reportedly doubled as enforcers, ready to intimidate anyone who resisted. When threats alone couldn't guarantee silence, prosecutors contend physical violence came into play, setting the stage for why Dawn Richard's testimony is so critical. If convicted on all counts, Combs faces life in prison. But he's not going quietly. His defense team has argued that the charges are motivated by sensationalism, that witnesses are coerced by prosecutors hungry for headlines. They've fought to keep domestic violence allegations off the table, saying they're irrelevant to sex trafficking statutes. Yet, federal law allows evidence of violence if it shows a pattern of coercion and control, exactly what the prosecution wants to prove. Over the last year, the trial has seen high-profile testimony, surprise filings, and explosive objections. But nothing prepared the courtroom, or the world, for Dawn Richard's bombshell. As we dive deeper, you'll see how her words could tip the balance between acquittal and conviction. Dawn Richard's rise to fame began in 2005 on MTV's Making the Band 3. Paired with Aubrey O'Day and 4 other hopefuls, she quickly became a fan favorite. The result? Danity Kane, a pop R&B sensation launched directly from Diddy's Bad Boy label. They scored platinum hits, MTV Video Music Award nods, and multiple sold-out tours. Later, Dawn joined Dirty Money, another Diddy-fueled project, and continued to record and co-write tracks that climbed the charts. She wasn't just an artist, she was a fixture in Combs' inner circle. Late-night sessions at his mansion, creative brainstorming over meals, cameras rolling for reality shows. Her life became intertwined with his. But beneath the glamour, she says, lay a household ruled by fear. In depositions and her own pending civil suit, Richard alleges Diddy withheld pay, threatened careers, and physically assaulted those who displeased him, all of which makes her one of the prosecution's most valuable witnesses. Unlike a distant victim, she had proximity, she toured with him, lived under his roof, and claims to have seen the darkest side of his power. When she took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. You could almost hear the record scratch as she shifted from pop star to truth teller in a case that transcends music charts and delves into the abuse of influence. As we're about to see, her recollections stretch back to 2009 but reverberate into every allegation the government is making today. Understanding who Dawn is, and how she got here, helps explain why the judge allowed her full testimony, despite fierce objections from Combs' legal team. Long before the federal indictment, Cassie Ventura, singer, model, and Diddy's former partner, filed a $20 million civil lawsuit in early 2023. She claimed physical assault, emotional abuse, and a pattern of intimidation designed to silence her. Her case settled later that year, but the terms remained confidential. Cassie's allegations set the stage, but Dawn Richard adds another layer. In her separate civil suit, filed just weeks after Cassie's, Richard accuses Combs of withholding royalties, sabotaging her career, and using threats to control both her finances and her voice. She alleges that he punished anyone who questioned him by freezing their accounts or canceling tours, tactics she argues are consistent with racketeering statutes. On the same day Dawn took the stand, Combs' attorneys swooped in with motions to dismiss her lawsuit entirely. They cited statute of limitations issues, argued her claims were duplicative of Cassie's, and attacked her credibility. It was a classic defense play: muddy the waters, delay the outcome, and shift focus back to legal technicalities. But in criminal court, those civil disputes underscore the government's narrative. Diddy didn't just traffic victims, he built an empire on fear. Cassie's suit showed the personal toll, Dawn's suit revealed the economic leverage. Together, they paint a portrait of a mogul who weaponized relationships, turning love into leverage, trust into terror. The courtroom leaned in when Dawn Richard began detailing what she saw in 2009 at Diddy's Los Angeles mansion. According to her testimony, Cassie Ventura had been in the kitchen preparing breakfast, scrambled eggs, a simple request. Dawn says Combs stormed in, furious. He accused Cassie of slacking and embarrassing him in front of friends. What happened next was, in Dawn's words, like something out of a nightmare. She says she saw him grab Cassie, punch her in the stomach so hard she crumpled, and then fling a frying pan in her direction, but missed, leaving her shaken. The next day, Dawn recounts, Diddy marched into a bedroom where she and a bandmate were sitting and threatened them both. Don't say anything. You think that was passion? When people talk about things like this, they end up missing. Those words alone sent a ripple through the gallery. But Dawn had more. She described bruises on Cassie's arms, a blood-red welt on her side, and a sight of her covering her face to hide the pain. She saw other guests, Usher, Neo, Jimmy Iovine, just pace nervously, unable or unwilling to intervene. What makes these details powerful is not just the violence itself, but the context. A celebrity dinner, cameras rolling, Dream Team artists in attendance, and still, no one stepped in to stop it. Dawn's testimony places violence at the heart of the prosecution's coercion argument, showing how fear and control were weaponized in that gilded mansion. The moment Dawn finished her pan anecdote, Diddy's lead attorney sprang to object. This is a sex trafficking trial, not a domestic violence hearing, he declared, voice echoing in the hushed courtroom. Her testimony is irrelevant, inflammatory, and unsupported. Inside counsel argued these stories of assaults, though shocking, had nothing to do with whether Combs financed or managed a sex trafficking ring. Worse, they claimed Dawn was a disgruntled artist aiming for a payday, willing to twist memory for sensational headlines. Prosecutors fired back immediately. Under Federal Rule 404(b), they explained, evidence of other bad acts is admissible to show motive, intent, and a pattern. Violence equals coercion. Coercion equals control. Control equals the backbone of every forced trafficking charge. They reminded the judge that if fear kept victims silent, then domestic abuse incidents, far from tangential, were central to proving a criminal enterprise. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows knit. He pointed to the docket. Counsel, you knew Ms. Richard was on the witness list. You knew exactly what she intended to say. Why object just now? The defense stuttered, insisting they hadn't known the full breadth. The judge muttered, you've had months to prepare. The objection was overruled. This clash set the tone for the day, defense insisting on a narrow reading, prosecution insisting on the big picture. And in the crossfire, Dawn Richard's testimony remained live, unfiltered, and devastatingly vivid. After the objection overruled, the judge paused and fixed Diddy's attorney with a steely gaze. Courtroom security officers adjusted their earpieces. Reporters leaned in. Counsel, the judge said, voice low but firm, this isn't the first time Ms. Richards' testimony has come up. You were served discovery weeks ago. You deposed her. You've known the scope for months. He tapped his gavel. You can't feign surprise now. You either limit your objections to form and foundation, or we move forward. The room crackled. The judge's rebuke wasn't just procedural, it was a statement of authority. He signaled that theatrics wouldn't derail this trial. We're here to find the truth, he continued. If you want to challenge memory or credibility, do it on cross. Don't waste the court's time with last-minute scope fights. The defense attorney, red-faced, conceded and moved on. But the moment had already landed. Headlines the next morning would read, judge scolds Diddy's lawyers. And every scalp-hungry reporter would quote that scene, amplifying Dawn's testimony even further. At that point, it became clear the judge wasn't going to let Combs' star power intimidate the process. He was determined to let all relevant evidence, especially anything showing violence and coercion, reach the jury. That decision would shape every following hearing and press conference. With objections behind her, Dawn faced cross-examination. Diddy's attorney adopted a surgical approach, dissect her every statement. First, he reminded the jury that she'd met with prosecutors 8 times over the last 18 months. Ms. Richard, he said, voice cool, in your many meetings with the government, haven't you changed key details at least 4 times? She nodded. I have. Why? He pressed. Are you embellishing for this trial? Dawn paused, gathering herself. No, she replied steadily. Trauma memory is tricky. I blocked out what happened. Over time, with therapy and discussions, the memories came back, sometimes differently than I first thought. He pushed again. So your story today isn't what you told them 6 months ago? She answered. It's as accurate as I can make it now. Throughout the back and forth, she never wavered from her core claim. She saw Cassie hurt, she heard threats, and she felt fear. The defense tried to paint her as opportunistic, but her controlled composure, and the consistency of her main allegations, undercut that narrative. Observers noted that this part of the trial was critical. If the jury believed her memory lapses were genuine trauma responses, and not coached revisions, it strengthened the prosecution's case. Because coercion doesn't rely on perfect recollection. It relies on credible evidence that fear was used, and that's exactly what Dawn provided. Dawn's testimony was just one piece. Next up, Carrie Gordon, Cassie Ventura's former best friend. Subpoenaed despite her reluctance, Gordon recounted a harrowing 2018 incident in which Combs allegedly choked her during a private dinner. I didn't want to be here, she told the court quietly. But I have a duty to speak what I saw. Then came David James, a former assistant who said Combs threatened to ruin his career if he spoke out. James detailed multiple episodes of violence toward Cassie, some overlapping with Dawn's timeline, others later, painting a pattern of abuse spanning years. Together, these testimonies weave a tapestry, not isolated outbursts, but a sustained regime of intimidation. They bolster the racketeering count by showing that Combs' alleged criminal enterprise wasn't limited to trafficking alone. It used violence to enforce secrecy and obedience. Prosecutors highlighted how each witness connected the dots. Threats made victims comply, memory delays caused initial silence, and powerful celebrity status insulated Combs from consequences, until now. As the courtroom cleared, headlines blared across social media, Dawn Richards' explosive court testimony. But what happens now could shape not just Combs' fate, but how society handles powerful figures accused of abuse. On Monday, the judge will rule on how much of Dawn's testimony enters the official record. The defense will press for limitations. The prosecution will fight for full inclusion. Meanwhile, closing arguments loom in September, and with them, we could see the first celebrity of hip-hop's golden era convicted under modern human trafficking laws. Beyond this trial, Dawn's decision to speak out sends ripples across Hollywood and the music industry. Victims of domestic and sexual violence see that even the biggest stars can be held accountable. Future defendants will watch this case closely, knowing that cameras, subpoenas, and unflinching witnesses can dismantle carefully curated images. So what's at stake? Justice for alleged victims, Cassie, Dawn, Carrie, and others. The integrity of federal law against trafficking and racketeering. And a message to power brokers everywhere: influence doesn't grant impunity. If you've followed this story, subscribe and hit the bell. We'll keep you updated on every twist, motions, rulings, witness appearances, and ultimately the jury's verdict. Because when the spotlight fades, the fractures remain, and they're more important than ever to expose.